You know that specific sound a $3,000 ergonomic chair makes when it's struggling to support the weight of a man's unearned confidence? It's a low-frequency groan, like a dying whale or a collapsing moral compass. That was the soundtrack to my Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the Innovation Aquarium, a glass-walled conference room that smelled of ozone and dry erase marker fumes, watching a man named Grant dismantle 17 years of my life with a laser pointer and a smile that looked like it was practiced in a mirror while listening to Gary Vaynerchuk podcasts. I'm Jade. I don't exist on LinkedIn. My job title on my tax return says logistics consultant, which is the bureaucratic equivalent of a beige wall. In reality, I design the digital supply chain protocols that ensure Air Force One doesn't accidentally get refueled with sludge or fitted with parts sourced from a dubious warehouse in a non-extradition country. I deal in absolutes, redundancies, and paranoia. And this is Grant. Grant is the new director of Agile Operations. He wears loafers without socks, uses words like synergy unironically, and thinks security clearance is a vibe rather than a federal investigation. Grant was currently pointing at a diagram of my Tier 1 filtration system. This, he said, tapping the screen hard enough to leave a fingerprint that would drive me insane for the next hour, is what I call legacy drag. It's dinosaur code, people. We're moving at the speed of government, and I need us to move at the speed of now. I took a sip of my black coffee. It was lukewarm, much like my faith in humanity. By the way, if you enjoy reading about highly competent women watching confident idiots ruin everything, maybe hit subscribe and give this an upvote. It keeps the lights on in my bunker and fuels my caffeine addiction. Anyway, back to the disaster. Grant, I said, my voice level. I don't shout. Shouting is for people who don't know where the bodies are buried. That dinosaur code is a triple-blind handshake protocol. It verifies that the fuel trucks entering the perimeter actually belong to the Defense Department and aren't just disguised U-Hauls packed with fertilizer. Grant chuckled. It was a wet, dismissive sound. He turned to the room, a collection of terrified junior analysts and exhausted sysadmins who looked like they were waiting for a meteor strike to end the meeting. See, this is the fear-based mindset we're pivoting away from. Jade, I respect your tenure. I really do. But we're implementing a lean procurement model. Trust is our currency. Trust isn't a currency, I replied, feeling a migraine tightening its grip behind my left eye. Trust is a vulnerability. Verification is a currency. And if you remove that layer, you're not pivoting. You're opening a back door. He sighed, the way a parent sighs at a toddler who won't eat their organic broccoli. Jade, you're thinking in constraints. I'm thinking in possibilities. Private sector doesn't wait for 3 signatures to buy a spark plug. Why should we? Because the private sector isn't responsible for the aerial transport of the nuclear football, I said. It came out sharper than I intended, slicing through the air conditioning hum. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the server racks in the basement, 3 floors down. Grant's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went dead. That's the thing about these corporate fixers, they don't have souls. They have KPIs. He didn't care about the nuclear football. He cared that my protocols added 45 minutes to his time-to-ship metric, and that was making his dashboard look red instead of green. We're going to table the nuclear talk, Jade. It's dramatic and, frankly, a bit toxic, Grant said, smoothing his tie. It was a hideous tie, a pattern of tiny sailboats that suggested he wished he was somewhere else. I wished he was somewhere else, too, preferably the bottom of the Mariana Trench. We are going to streamline the vendor list. We're going to automate the approval gates, and we are going to do it by Friday. He looked at me, expecting me to crumble or argue or throw a stapler. That's what he was used to, emotional pushback. He wasn't used to the silence of a predator watching prey wander into a minefield. I looked at his diagram. He had drawn a big red X over the section labeled Echo Zero. It was the deployer audit trail. It was the only thing that connected the physical inventory to the encrypted military database. Without it, we were just Amazon Prime with bigger guns. Friday, I repeated, you want to migrate a classified logistics mainframe to a lean model in 4 days. Agility, Jade. Adapt or die, he said, finger gunning at me. I wanted to break his finger. Instead, I set my coffee cup down with a precise, soft clink. Understood, I lied. I'll start preparing the documentation for the transition. I wasn't preparing documentation. I was preparing a funeral. Not for me, though he didn't know that yet, but for his entire career. I realized in that moment that Grant wasn't just a nuisance. He was a systemic error. And in my line of work, you don't argue with errors. You isolate them. You sandbox them. And then you let them execute their corrupted code until they crash the system in a controlled environment. But Grant wasn't in a sandbox. He was in the main control tower, and he had just threatened to turn off the safety lights because they were too bright. As the meeting dispersed, the junior analysts shuffled past me, eyes averted. They knew. They could smell the ozone of a burning career. Lena, a sharp kid from MIT who I'd been mentoring on encryption hygiene, paused by my chair. She pretended to organize her notes. He doesn't know what Echo Zero is, does he? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustle of papers. No, I whispered back, staring at the whiteboard where Grant had written disrupt in all caps. He thinks it's just a delay timer. Are you going to tell him? I looked at Lena. She was young. She still believed that if you explained things clearly enough, logic would prevail. She hadn't yet learned that for men like Grant, logic is just noise that interrupts the sound of their own voice. I told him, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. He called it toxic. Now we let the system tell him. I walked back to my desk, a corner office that was technically a converted server closet, but it was my server closet. It was the only room in the building with its own hardline connection to the subbasement archives. I sat down and unlocked my workstation. The screen glowed with the comforting, brutalist aesthetic of a command line interface. No icons, no friendly UX, just raw data and the power to freeze a shipment of jet fuel in Alaska with a single keystroke. Grant wanted lean, he wanted fast, he wanted to strip away the dinosaur code. I cracked my knuckles. It's a bad habit, I know, my mother hates it, but it helps me think. I opened the master directory. I saw the file for Protocol 17B, the redundancy check for third-party vendors. Grant had already flagged it for deletion in the project management software. Okay, Grant, I muttered to the blinking cursor. You want to drive the car? Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize I took the brake pads with me. I didn't delete anything yet. I just organized. I moved my personal audit logs to a secure, partition drive that Grant didn't have clearance to see, mostly because he didn't know it existed. I archived the emails where he explicitly ordered the removal of safety checks. I created a digital paper trail so thick and heavy it could be used as a blunt weapon in a court of law. The air in the office felt different now. Thinner. Sharper. It was the calm before the purge. I saw Grant walking around the floor, clapping people on the back, disrupting workflows, asking what are you working on, like a toddler interrupting a bomb defusal squad. He was marking his territory. He stopped at my desk. Jade, good energy in there today. I felt we really broke through some barriers. I looked up. We certainly broke something, Grant. He winked. He actually winked. That's the spirit. Break things fast. Fix them later. Fix them later, I echoed. Sure. He walked away, whistling. I watched him go. He was walking toward the server room. He didn't have a badge for the server room yet. He was going to bounce off the door. Thump, he bounced. He looked around annoyed, then tapped his phone, probably emailing HR to complain about the friction of locked doors. I turned back to my screen. I had work to do. If he was going to burn this place down, I needed to make sure I was standing in the only fireproof corner when the match dropped. The strategic silence had begun. I wouldn't argue anymore. I would just watch and wait. The dismantling didn't happen with a bang. It happened with a series of JIRA tickets. By Wednesday morning, Grant had unleashed what he called Operation Velocity. In practical terms, this meant stripping the flesh off the skeleton of our security infrastructure to make it run lighter. It was like watching a surgeon remove unnecessary organs, like the liver and the heart, because they weighed too much. My inbox was a graveyard of automated notifications. Access revoked, protocol disabled, user permission changed. I watched the screen as Protocol 9 Alpha went dark. That was the automated background check for delivery drivers entering the secure perimeter. Grant had replaced it with a streamlined vendor portal that was essentially a Google form with a smiley face at the end. He called it removing friction. I called it inviting the entire terrifying spectrum of the dark web to our loading dock. I walked to the break room to get coffee, mostly to avoid screaming into my keyboard. The mood in the bullpen was grim. People were typing furiously, heads down, avoiding eye contact. It felt less like a logistics center and more like the deck of the Titanic if the captain had announced that icebergs were just unscheduled hydration opportunities. Lena was by the water cooler, looking like she hadn't slept. She was clutching a tablet like a shield. He fired Jenkins, she whispered, staring into her paper cup. Jenkins, I blinked. Jenkins manages the cryo-storage manifests. He's the only one who knows how to calibrate the temperature sensors for the medical payloads. Grant said Jenkins wasn't a culture fit, said he asked too many questions about compliance. Lena looked up at me, her eyes wide and terrified. Jade, he's giving Jenkins access to an intern. A marketing intern. He said we need fresh eyes on the cold chain. My stomach did a slow, cold roll. A marketing intern managing medical payloads for Air Force transports. That wasn't just negligence, that was biological warfare with extra steps. Keep your head down, Lena, I said, my voice low. Do exactly what he says. But email me a confirmation of every order he gives you. Blind copy me. Use the private server, not the exchange. He's revoked your admin rights on the procurement tier, Lena said, her voice trembling. I saw the ticket come through 10 minutes ago. He said you were blocking progress. I nodded. I expected that. It's fine. I don't need admin rights to see the crash coming. Just do as I say, document everything. I went back to my desk. I tried to log into the procurement tier, the system that orders parts for the planes. Access denied. Little red padlock icon shook at me. It was almost cute. Grant had locked the architect out of the house. But here's the thing about building a house. You know where the spare keys are hidden. You know about the loose floorboard in the hallway and the crawl space behind the pantry. I didn't try to hack back in. That would trigger an alert, and Grant was probably watching for that, desperate for a reason to march me out with security. Instead, I opened a terminal window that looked like nothing more than a system diagnostic tool. It was a legacy port, a ghost node, that I had hard-coded into the mainframe back in 2008 during a system migration. It wasn't an active control panel, it was a listening post. It couldn't change data, but it could see every single bit of data flowing through the veins of the facility. I ran a script, mirror log slash silent slash target, external drive E. While Grant was busy deleting safety latches, I was silently cloning the entire audit history of his actions. Every click, every override, every time he ignored a critical warning pop-up by clicking the little X in the corner. I was building a panoramic photograph of his stupidity in 4K resolution. Around 11 a.m., Grant strolled past my office. He stopped, leaning against the doorframe with that casual, lean-back arrogance that makes you want to throw a chair through a window. "Jade, how's the documentation coming?" He was holding a stress ball, squeezing it rhythmically. "Squeak, squeak, it's coming," I said, not looking away from my scrolling lines of code. "Noticed you streamlined the driver vetting process. Bold move. Boldness is the strategy," he beamed. "We've already cut onboarding time by 60%. Vendors love it. We're getting high fives in the Slack channel." "I'm sure the vendors love it," I said flatly. "Especially the ones who have failed federal background checks in 3 states. They must be thrilled." Grant's smile tightened. "You're stuck in the past, Jade. You see criminals, I see partners. We operate on trust now." "Does the Secret Service operate on trust?" I asked, finally turning to look at him. He waved a hand dismissively. "This isn't the Secret Service. It's logistics. It's boxes moving from A to B. Don't overcomplicate it to justify your salary." That was the line. Don't overcomplicate it to justify your salary. I felt a cold calm wash over me. It was the feeling of a bridge burning, the structure finally giving way and falling into the river. I realized then that I wasn't just going to let him fail. I was going to help him reach the inevitable conclusion of his own philosophy. "You're right, Grant," I said, forcing a thin, tight smile. "Maybe I have been overthinking it. Boxes from A to B? Got it." He looked surprised, then pleased. He thought he'd broken me. He thought he'd won the dogfight. "Glad you're on board. We're doing a town hall at 2 p.m. to announce the new Speed First initiative. I want you there, front row. Show the team we're aligned." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. He left, squeaking down the hall. I turned back to my ghost node. The data was pouring in. The system was already bleeding. I could see the errors starting to tick up in the peripheral logs, tiny mismatches in weight manifests, routing numbers that didn't quite checksum correctly. The digital immune system of the facility was dying, cell by cell. I pulled a small, encrypted hard drive from my bag and plugged it in. The backup completed. 100%. I had the evidence. Now I just needed the crime. And looking at the way Grant was tearing down the fences around the lion's den, I knew the crime wasn't far off. I checked my phone. A text from an old contact at the Pentagon, a colonel I'd worked with during the Iraq drawdown. "Hearing noise about a reorg over there. You good?" I stared at the message. I typed back, "Define good. The monkeys have the keys to the zoo. Keep your phone on." I put the phone away. I could feel the hum of the servers beneath my feet, a vibration I had lived with for nearly 2 decades. It felt like a heartbeat. And for the first time in 17 years, the heartbeat was irregular, arrhythmic. The purge was almost complete. The system was wide open. Grant had removed the constraints. He had no idea that those constraints were the only thing keeping gravity in check. The disaster arrived on a Thursday, wrapped in a deceptively simple shipping manifest. I was in the break room, staring at the microwave as it nuked a sad Tupperware of leftover risotto, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It wasn't a text. It was a haptic alert pattern I had programmed 5 years ago. Long short, priority 1 anomaly. I left the risotto spinning. I walked back to my office, not running, but moving with the kinetic purpose of a paramedic approaching a car wreck. I slid into my chair and woke the ghost node. There it was. A flashing line of red text amidst the green waterfall of data. Alert. Unverified source detected in Stream AF1OX Logistics. Payload, Avionics Component Class 4, Origin. Shenzhen via Shell Corp 77, override authorized by Admin Grant. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a metaphor. I literally felt the temperature of my blood drop. Grant had authorized a shipment of Class 4 avionics critical navigation chips from a vendor that was flagged in our system as a Shell Corp 77. In layman's terms, that means it's a front company. Likely foreign intelligence. Possibly just black market trash, but definitely not the vetted, secure supply chain required for the aircraft that carries the President of the United States. He had bypassed the filter. The dinosaur code he hated so much was actually a geofence designed to stop exactly this. He had manually forced the gate open. I took a screenshot, then another. I saved them to the encrypted drive, then I stood up. This wasn't about office politics anymore. This was treason adjacent. It was negligence on a scale that lands you in a federal supermax, not just the unemployment line. I walked straight to Grant's office. I didn't knock. Grant was on a video call, feet up on his desk, laughing at something on the screen. When I walked in, he looked annoyed. He held up a finger, signaling me to wait. I didn't wait. I walked over to his desk and tapped end call on his monitor. Hey, he dropped his feet to the floor, face flushing red. I was on with the VP of Operations. What the hell is your problem, Jade? My problem, I said, my voice quiet and deadly terrifying, is that you just authorized a shipment of navigation chips from a blacklisted supplier in Shenzhen directly into the Air Force One maintenance queue. Grant rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd detach. Oh my God, Jade, are we doing this again? I approved a component sourcing request. Vendor offered a 40% cost reduction and guaranteed 2-day delivery. That's called efficiency. That's called a national security breach, I said, leaning over his desk, my palms flat on the fake mahogany. That vendor is flagged for a reason. Their hardware is known to contain backdoor surveillance firmware. You are literally inviting a foreign power to listen in on the president's navigation data. You're paranoid, he spat, standing up to try and match my height. He failed. You see spies in every circuit board. I vetted them. They have a website. They have a 5-star rating on the vendor portal I built. A 5-star rating, I repeated, incredulous. You're basing national security on a Yelp review? I'm basing it on speed, Jade, something you clearly don't understand. He was shouting now, his neck veins bulging against his collar. I am the director. I authorized the override. It is done. The shipment is already en route. Recall it, I said. Cancel the order. Flag the shipment for quarantine. Do it now, Grant. No, he said, crossing his arms. I'm not going to look like an indecisive idiot in front of the VP because you have a boogaman fetish. The shipment proceeds. And frankly, Jade, your attitude is becoming a major blocker to our velocity. I stared at him. I really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. He knew deep down that he didn't know what he was doing. But his ego was steering the bus, and he'd rather drive off a cliff than ask for directions. Grant, I said, and my voice changed. The anger evaporated, replaced by a cold, formal detachment. This was the moment I stopped being his employee and started being a witness for the prosecution. I need you to state for the record that you are consciously overriding the trace flag on stream AF1AUX despite a direct warning from the senior security engineer regarding the origin of these components. He scoffed. Don't lawyer me, Jade. Yes, I authorize it. I am overriding your outdated paranoid filter. Consider this a direct order to stand down. Is that a formal instruction? Yes, stand down. In fact, he paused, a cruel glint in his eye. Maybe you need some time to think about whether you fit in this new organization. Maybe your role is being, what's the word? Sunsetted. I stood up straight. I adjusted my blazer. Understood, I said. You're sunsetting the security protocols, and you're overriding the safety filters for the presidential fleet. I'm modernizing logistics, he corrected. Now get out of my office. I turned and walked out. I didn't go back to my desk to cry. I didn't go to HR to complain. I went to the server room door. My badge still worked for now. I walked into the cold, humming aisle of the data center. I found the specific rack that handled the physical logging of system alerts. I wasn't there to sabotage. I was there to ensure the black box was recording. I checked the status lights. Green, recording. Grant had just signed his name to a disaster. He thought he was moving fast and breaking things. He didn't realize that the thing he had just broken was the only thing standing between him and a military tribunal. I walked back to my desk. I felt light, weightless. The responsibility was gone. I had warned him. I had documented the warning. I had confirmed his refusal. The line had been crossed. Now, all I had to do was step out of the blast radius. Resignation letters are usually drafted with a mix of regret and diplomacy. Mine was drafted with the precision of a sniper adjusting for windage. 2. Grant, Director of Agile Operations, HR Department. From Jade Rivera subject. Immediate resignation/transfer of authority effective immediately. I am resigning from my position as Senior Security Protocol Engineer. Per your verbal instruction at 11:42 a.m. today, I am standing down and ceasing all oversight of the logistics streams. All liability for system overrides authorized by the director now resides solely with the director's office. I didn't add sincerely. I didn't add best wishes. I hit send. The sound of the email swooshing away was better than any symphony I'd ever heard. I started packing my box. Not a lot to pack after 17 years. A framed photo of my dog, who had more clearance than Grant. A coffee mug that said I am the error handler, and a small cactus that had survived 3 administration changes. I left the binders. I left the manuals. I left the sticky notes with the non-critical passwords, but I kept the badge, not the physical plastic card. I'd have to hand that in. I kept the digital badge. Years ago, I had created a system auditor profile. It wasn't an admin account. It couldn't change settings or stop a shipment. It was a read-only account designed for external audits. It was invisible to the standard user directory because it was hard-coded into the kernel level of the operating system. As long as the servers had power, the auditor account existed, and I had the private key memorized. Lena appeared at my cubicle wall, her face pale. Jade, I saw the email. You can't leave. The system is? It's acting weird. The inventory counts are flickering. I have to leave, Lena, I said, placing the cactus gently in the box. If I stay, I'm complicit. If I stay, I'm the one they blame when the plane falls out of the sky. But what do I do? Tears were welling up in her eyes. Grant keeps approving things. He just turned off the hazardous material conflicting check because it was slowing down the trucks. I stopped and looked at her. She was a good kid. She didn't deserve this. Listen to me closely, I said, lowering my voice. Do not sign anything. Do not authorize anything with your own credentials. If he orders you to do it, tell him you don't have access and make him do it on his terminal. Make him leave his fingerprints on the murder weapon. She nodded, sniffing. Okay, but who's going to fix the green layer? I smiled. It was a sad smile. Nobody is going to fix the green layer, Lena, because Grant doesn't know it exists. What happens when it desynchronizes? Then the building goes into lockdown and the adults show up, I said, just. Make sure you're not in the loading bay when the shutters come down. It gets loud. I picked up my box. Grant came out of his office holding a printout of my resignation email. He looked triumphant. He looked like he had just slain the dragon. Well, he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. I see you decided to embrace the change. Probably for the best, Jade. We need people who are all in on the vision. The vision is crystal clear, Grant, I said. I need your badge and your keys, he said, holding out a hand. I dropped my plastic keycard into his palm. All yours, you have full control now. The safety wheels are off. Finally, he breathed, pocketing the card. Now we can really move. Just one piece of advice, Grant, I said, shifting the box to my hip. Watch the green layer filters. If they start blinking, don't just clear the cache. Green layer, he scoffed. More made-up jargon. I'll have IT purge the old scripts by Monday. We're moving to the cloud. Right? The cloud, I said. Good luck with that. I walked to the elevator. I could feel the eyes of the entire office on my back. Some were terrified, some were confused, but mostly they were silent. They knew the dampener was leaving the reactor core. The elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of Grant standing in the middle of the floor, arms akimbo, looking like the king of a kingdom built on quicksand. I walked out to the parking lot. The Colorado sun was bright and blinding. The air smelled of pine and ozone. I walked to my car, a sensible Subaru, and put the box in the passenger seat. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I expected to feel panic. I expected to feel the urge to run back in and save them. But I didn't. I felt the grim satisfaction of a structural engineer who sees cracks in the foundation, warns the owner, gets fired, and then watches from a safe distance as gravity does its work. I started the car. System, I said to the empty car. Initiate drive home. I wasn't driving away from a job. I was driving away from a crime scene before the bodies had even hit the floor. As I pulled out of the lot, I glanced at the building one last time. It looked peaceful, solid, but I knew better. Inside those walls, a clock was ticking. A clock I had wound, and a clock Grant had just stripped the gears off of. I gave it 48 hours, maybe less. The first 24 hours of retirement were strange. I cleaned my gutters, I walked the dog. I drank expensive scotch on my porch, but my phone was never far away. It started with a text from Lena at 10:45 a.m. on Friday. Hey, the inventory system is auto-tagging jet fuel as potable water. Grant says it's a UI glitch and to just put a sticky note on the tanks. Is that normal? I stared at the screen. Jet fuel tagged as drinking water. In a combat zone or a disaster relief mission, that mistake kills people. It poisons a village or stalls a generator in a medevac tent. I didn't reply. I couldn't. If I replied, I was consulting, and Grant could claim I gave bad advice. I poured another coffee and watched a hawk circle over the tree line. 2 hours later, another text. The secure doors in Sector 4 keep opening and closing on their own. It's freaking everyone out. Grant had maintenance cut the power to the motors. Now they're just propped open with wooden wedges. Wooden wedges holding open the blast doors to the secure server farm. I laughed. A dry, harsh bark of a laugh. It was perfect. The agile approach literally meant using a doorstop to bypass millions of dollars in physical security. By Friday afternoon, the silence from the facility was louder than the texts. Grant had likely issued a gag order. Don't talk to the crazy ex-employee. I went into my home office and logged into the audit node. I wasn't touching the system, just looking through the keyhole. The dashboard was a sea of yellow warnings. Warning, logic mismatch. Tier 3. Warning, invalid certificate. Vendor, unknown. Warning, dependency failure. Protocol Jade legacy not found. System was looking for me. The code I had written over a decade was designed to check in with a master authorization key, my specific user profile, every 48 hours for high-level changes. It was a dead man's switch for integrity. If my profile was deleted or inactive, the system assumed the facility had been compromised or that the chain of command was broken. Grant had deleted my active user profile. The system was now asking, where is the adult? Getting no answer. I saw a query running in the internal video archives. Someone was searching for Jade Rivera training and green layer explanation. It was Lena. She was digging. She found an old video from 2014. I could see the playback log. In the video, I was younger, less tired, explaining the green layer logic to a room of generals. The green layer, video Jade said, is the silent arbiter. It sits between the civilian supply chain and the military execution. It doesn't care about cost. It doesn't care about speed. It only cares about provenance. If a part cannot be traced back to the mine where the metal was dug, the green layer rejects it. If you try to force it, the green layer assumes a hostile takeover and initiates a defensive lockdown. I watched the log as the video ended. Then, a new log entry appeared. Action: disable green layer script user. Admin Grant, he was trying to kill the ghost. Lena must have showed him the video, or he found it, and his reaction wasn't, "Oh, I should be careful." It was, "Delete the thing that says no." He entered the command to delete the script. But here's the thing about the green layer. You can't delete it from the user interface. It's kernel level. When you try to delete it, it interprets that action as a specific type of threat: insider sabotage. Warnings on my screen changed from yellow to orange. Threat detected, unauthorized system deletion attempt. Status monitoring. Escalation timer started. Grant had just poked the bear. He didn't know the bear was awake. He thought he was just clearing out old files to make his dashboard look cleaner. My phone buzzed again. Lena. He tried to delete the green layer files. The screens flashed orange for a second. He's laughing about it, says he purged the ghosts. Jade. I'm scared. The air conditioning just stopped in the server room. The AC stopping wasn't a glitch. It was the first stage of the lockdown protocol. The system was sealing the environment to prevent thermal spread in case the sabotage involved fire. I finally typed a reply. Go home, Lena. Tell them you're sick. Leave the building. Now. I watched the ... of her typing. Then it stopped. 10 minutes later, I saw her badge swipe at the exit turnstile. Lena M. exit 16? 15. Good, she was safe. Now it was just Grant, his team of agile yes men, and a logic bomb that had been ticking for 17 years, waiting for someone stupid enough to cut the red wire. I sat back in my chair. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my desk. The orange warning light on my remote screen pulsed rhythmically. It matched my heartbeat. The internal fracture was complete. The structure was compromised. Now came the collapse. Saturday morning was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that precedes a tornado. I woke up early, made coffee, and immediately checked the audit node. The orange warnings had settled into a steady, low-level burn, like embers in a wall. The system was holding its breath, waiting for the next violation to confirm its suspicions. Grant, in his infinite wisdom, decided that Saturday was the perfect day to clear the backlog of blocked shipments. He wanted to start Monday with a clean slate. He wanted to show the VP that his speed-first initiative had eliminated the queue. At 09:00 a.m., the logs showed activity. Grant was logging in from home, of course, bypassing the secure VPN, of course, and batch-approving held items. Click, approve, click, approve, click, approve. He was rubber-stamping logistics orders like he was liking posts on Instagram. Then, at 09:14 a.m., he hit the tripwire. The shipment from Shell Corp 77, the one with the navigation chips I had explicitly warned him about, had been flagged by the green layer as quarantined. It was sitting in a digital cage, isolated from the main supply chain. Grant saw the cage. He saw the quarantined label, and in his mind, that label was just another bureaucratic hurdle. Action: manual override quarantine user. Admin Grant justification. Expedited delivery / vendor trusted. I watched the command execute on my screen. I stopped breathing for a second. He didn't just unlock the gate. He forced the system to inject the corrupted data, the manifests for the spy chips, directly into the Tier Echo 0 database. This is the database that Air Force One's maintenance crews used to verify parts. If those chips got installed, the plane wouldn't just be compromised, it would be a flying listening post for a foreign adversary. The system reacted instantly. The diagnostic text on my screen vanished. The scrolling green and orange lines disappeared. The screen went black. Then a single line of text appeared, blinking in stark white. Protocol violation confirmed, Tier Echo 0 breach. Source: internal admin. Response: DEFCON logistics automation. Awaiting timeout. System wasn't whispering anymore. It was racking a shotgun slide. My phone buzzed. It was an automated alert from the facility's main server, one that Grant couldn't disable because he didn't know the IP address. Subject: green layer is glitching. Help? It wasn't the system. It was Lena, emailing me from her personal account at home. She must have still been getting notifications on her phone. Jade, I'm getting alerts that the main warehouse robots have stopped moving. The inventory screens are all showing a countdown. It says 15:00. What happens at 3 p.m.? I looked at the clock. It was 9:30 a.m. The system had initiated a grace period. It was giving the authorized users 6 hours to reverse the command, to enter a rigorous cryptographic key that proved they were sane, sober, and authorized. Grant didn't have that key. I had that key. And I was sitting on my porch watching a hummingbird. I didn't reply to Lena. I deleted the email. It was cleaner that way. I went back to the audit node. I could see Grant's activity log. He was frantically clicking now. Command: reset system denied command. Clear alerts denied command. Pseudo force unlock access violation. He was realizing that the steering wheel had disconnected from the tires. He was spinning it wildly, but the car was driving itself now. I imagined him in his home office, probably spilling his kale smoothie. He would be calling IT support, but IT support couldn't help him. The green layer wasn't an IT issue, it was a military doctrine encoded in C++. The countdown ticked on. 10 o'clock a.m., 12 o'clock p.m., 2 o'clock p.m. At 2:45 p.m., I poured a glass of water. I sat down in front of my screens. I pulled up the external camera feeds for the facility parking lot. I hacked into them years ago for security monitoring. I saw cars in the lot, the weekend crew, some poor logistics coordinators trying to figure out why their screens were frozen. At 2:55 p.m., the audit node displayed a new message. Grace period expired. No valid key detected, assuming hostile takeover. Executing lockdown. The whispers were over. The scream was about to start. At 3 o'clock p.m. exactly, the facility ceased to be a corporate logistics center and remembered what it was built to be, a fortress. On my screen, the timestamp hit 15:00:00. Instantaneously, the green layer executed its final logic block, conditional lockdown, breach level 3. I switched the feed to the interior cameras, the ones in the main hallway and the server room. There was no audio, but the visual was chaotic poetry. First, the lights. The standard fluorescent overheads cut out instantly. The building plunged into darkness for exactly 2 seconds. Then the emergency lighting kicked in. Not the soft white safety lights you see in office buildings. These were deep, throbbing red strobes designed to disorient intruders and signal catastrophic failure. Flash, dark, flash, dark. In the hallway, I saw employees freeze. They looked up, confused. Then the blast shutters descended. These weren't flimsy security grates. They were 2-inch thick steel plates recessed into the ceiling, designed to isolate the facility in case of a chemical attack or a physical breach. They slammed down over the main entrance, the loading docks, and the windows. Clang. I could almost feel the vibration through the monitor. The open office concept was suddenly partitioned into steel cells. I checked the server room camera. The door, the one Grant had propped open with a wooden wedge, was the only failure point. The blast shutter tried to descend but hit the wedge. It jammed halfway, but the system was redundant. Seeing the physical seal fail, it initiated the secondary protocol, data severance. Every computer terminal in the building went black. Then, a single image appeared on every monitor, from the receptionist's iPad to the massive dashboard screen in the war room. It was the Department of Defense seal, rotating slowly. Below it, in harsh block letters, unauthorized incursion detected. Jurisdiction transferred to USAF command. Remain in place. Grant was in the facility. He must have driven in when the system stopped responding remotely. I found him on camera 4, standing in the middle of the bullpen. He was screaming into his cell phone. I checked the cellular spectrum analyzer on my ghost node. Signal jamming, active. His phone was a brick. Facility had engaged a local Faraday cage protocol. No signals in, no signals out, except for one hardline, the one connecting the facility to the Pentagon. Grant looked at his phone, tapped it furiously, then threw it across the room. It skittered across the floor and hit the shoe of a terrified intern. He ran to the main exit. He pushed the push bar. Locked. He slammed his shoulder against it. Solid steel. He was trapped in the cage he had built, with the people he had terrorized under the red strobes of the system he had mocked. I watched him panic. It wasn't the funny kind of panic. It was the primal fear of a man realizing he is no longer the predator. He was banging on the glass of the reception booth, which was also sealed, mouthing words. I could lip read enough to catch them. Open the door. I am the director. The system didn't care about his title. The system only cared about the cryptographic signature he didn't have. On my audit node, the final confirmation rolled in, perimeter secure. External notification sent, USAF Space Command/Joint Chiefs. Reason, Tier Echo 0 integrity compromised. The text turned from white to a steady, calm blue, awaiting military intervention. I sat back and took a sip of my water. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from the adrenaline of the execute command. It was done. The bomb hadn't just gone off. It had successfully imploded the building's operational capacity without hurting a single person physically. Career-wise, there were casualties everywhere. I checked the external camera again. In the distance, coming up the long access road, I saw the flashing lights, not police cars, black SUVs, military police. The cavalry wasn't coming to save Grant, they were coming to arrest him. I closed the laptop lid. I didn't need to see the rest, I knew the protocol. It would breach the perimeter, secure the servers, and detain the senior officer on site. That was Grant. I walked into my kitchen and started making dinner, chopping vegetables. The rhythmic chop, chop, chop of the knife replaced the clunk, clunk, clunk of the blast doors in my head. I had salted the earth. Now, I just had to wait for the soil to be tested. I didn't witness the next part live, but I heard the recording later. It became part of the official inquest. A digital artifact passed around the secure engineer community like a bootleg concert tape. It happened inside the war room, Grant's renamed conference room, about 45 minutes after the lockdown. The military police had breached the side entrance, cutting through the maglocks with thermal torches. They swarmed the building, zip-tying everyone until identities could be verified. Grant was dragged into the conference room, sweating, tie undone, demanding to speak to whoever is in charge of this glitch. The main screen in the room, which had been displaying the spinning DoD seal, suddenly flickered. The seal vanished. In its place was a high-definition video feed. General Marcus Thorne, 4 stars, Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. I knew Thorne. We had shared MREs in a bunker in 2009 while debugging a satellite uplink. He was a man who smiled once a decade, usually when a hostile regime collapsed. He wasn't smiling now. Grant, still trying to muster some authority despite being flanked by 2 MPs with carbines, straightened his jacket. General, Grant stammered, "Thank God, there's been a massive malfunction. My systems are." "Be quiet," Thorne said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It had the weight of an aircraft carrier. The audio quality in the room was crystal clear. Grant's mouth snapped shut. "Mr. Grant," Thorne continued, reading from a file on his desk. "At 09:14 hours, your credentials were used to override a level 5 quarantine on a supply stream designated for presidential support logistics. Is this accurate?" I expedited a shipment," Grant said, his voice rising in pitch. It was a lean optimization. The vendor was vetted via our portal. "I have the metrics to prove," the vendor, Thorne interrupted, "is a known front for the Ministry of State Security. You attempted to install tracking hardware on Air Force One. Do you understand the definition of treason, Mr. Grant?" Grant went pale. "Treason? No, I'm a civilian contractor. I was just streamlining." "You bypassed the green layer," Thorne said. "Why?" "It was dinosaur code." Grant yelled, desperate now. It was blocking efficiency. "I had to remove the legacy drag." Thorne stared at him for a long, uncomfortable silence. "That dinosaur code was written by the lead architect of our secure logistics integration, Jade Rivera." Grant blinked. "Jade? She's just a paranoid obstructionist. I fired her." "You removed the only qualified engineer with the clearance to manage the Echo Zero tier," Thorne said. "And in doing so, you triggered a dormant defense protocol designed to prevent exactly this kind of incompetence." Thorne leaned into the camera. "Who authorized you to override the protocols of a national security asset?" The mandate was agility," Grant whispered. "The mandate," Thorne said, "was security. You have failed." Thorne looked away from the camera, addressing someone off-screen. "Take him into custody. Secure the facility. Initiate a full forensic audit." "Wait," Grant screamed as the MPs grabbed his arms. "I can fix it. I just need to reboot the server. You will not touch a keyboard again as long as you live," Thorne said. Then the general looked back at the camera. He seemed to be looking through the lens, through the fiber optics, straight into the ether where he knew I was listening. "Get me Rivera," he said. The screen went black. Back at my house, my phone rang. It wasn't the haptic alert. It was a standard ringtone. "Caller ID unknown." I picked up. "This is Jade." "Jade," a colonel's voice said. "General Thorne sends his regards. We have a situation at the facility." I said. "Stirring my pasta sauce. Sounds like a glitch." "It's not a glitch and you know it. The system is locked down hard. We can't get into the mainframe. The encryption keys rotated when the lockdown hit." "Sounds like the green layer doing its job," I said. "Jade," the colonel sighed. "Grant is in cuffs. The contract with his firm is terminated effective immediately. We need the facility back online. The president has a schedule." "That sounds like a complex problem, Colonel." "What do you want, Jade?" I paused. I looked at my kitchen, at the peace and quiet I had fought for. "I want a new contract," I said, "direct with the DoD. No civilian middlemen, no directors of agility. I report to the Pentagon and I run the protocols my way. And I want it in writing, signed by Thorne before I even put my shoes on." There was a pause on the other end. "Done," the colonel said. "A car is on its way to you." "Tell them to wait," I said. "I'm eating dinner." I hung up. I sat down at my table and ate my pasta. It was perfectly cooked, al dente, just the way I like it. I returned to the facility on Tuesday. I took Monday off because, frankly, I could. I didn't drive my Subaru. I arrived in the back of a government sedan, escorted by 2 very polite officers who opened the door for me. The parking lot was different. The Agile Operations banner that Grant had hung over the entrance was gone, replaced by the standard U.S. Air Force logistics flag. The vibe wasn't startup energy anymore, it was solemn duty. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist, a terrified young woman named Sarah, looked up. When she saw me, her shoulders visibly dropped 3 inches. Relief. "Welcome back, Miss Rivera," she whispered. I nodded. "Good morning, Sarah." I walked through the bullpen. The open plan office was quiet. No music, no Nerf guns. Just the sound of typing and serious conversations. The collaboration pods were being dismantled by maintenance crews. Grant's office, the glass fishbowl, was empty. His ergonomic chair was gone. His whiteboard, which had said disrupt, was wiped clean. It was just a glass box now. I didn't go in there. I didn't want his office. I walked to my server closet. My cactus was still in the box on my desk where I had left it, but someone, Lena, probably had watered it. Lena was waiting for me. She looked like she had aged 5 years and 3 days. "Jade," she said, standing up, "Is it? Is it over?" "The disruption is over," I said, putting my bag down. "How's the team shaken?" she said. "HR is doing interviews." The FBI seized Grant's laptop. They found a lot of overrides. I imagine they did. The colonel walked in. He was a tall man with a haircut you could set a watch to. Miss Rivera, he said. The general is waiting for the all-clear signal. I need access to the console, I said. He nodded and handed me a new badge. It didn't say consultant, it said Director of Protocol Ops Clearance, Yankee White. I took the badge. It felt heavy. I walked to the main terminal in the center of the room. The screen still showed the blue awaiting military intervention status. I typed in my credentials. User, Jade R password. The system hesitated for a millisecond, checking the biometrics of my typing cadence. It recognized the dinosaur. Welcome back, architect. Restore from backup? Y/NI typed Y. The red lights in the ceiling stopped flashing. The blast shutters groaned and began to lift, letting the Colorado sunlight flood back into the room. The air conditioning hummed to life, changing from the emergency cycle to the standard cooling flow. The screens around the room flickered and returned to their familiar green dashboards. Green Layer was back online, silent and invisible, wrapping its protective arms around the supply chain. We are green across the board, I said to the colonel. Good work, Director, he said. Try to keep the drama to a minimum this time. As long as the chain of command stays vertical, there won't be any drama, I replied. He walked away. I sat in my chair, my old, comfortable, non-ergonomic chair. I looked at the code scrolling on my screen. It was complex, dense, and redundant. It was slow, it was safe. Grant was gone, likely facing a federal judge who didn't care about his velocity. His career was a crater. His reputation was ash. I had one. But as I looked around the room, at the scared faces of the analysts, at the empty glass office, I didn't feel happy. I felt necessary. I was the wall, and walls don't have feelings, they just hold the roof up. I pulled up a new terminal window. Update protocol, no civilian override. Set permission, Jade only. I hit enter. System, I whispered, lock the gate. Click, we were safe again, and this time I had the only key.